Experiences You Should Have, your how-to guide for amazing experiences. Now today, we're going to be talking about trains. And I feel like anytime I bring up the subject of trains, so many different people either love them or they hate them. But I'm going to be talking to a very special someone who lived and fulfilled a lifelong dream of taking a train across the United States. Pretty amazing. Oh, and he's my husband, Luke Menasco. So tell me about this cross-country train trip you just did.
Sure. Taking the train cross-country is something I've always wanted to do. I've taken a few shorter train trips, and I always wished that they were longer, that they were a little bit longer. And so I decided to go all the way across country. And my dad lives in Florida, so I thought it would be a good excuse to go visit my dad and my stepmom for a few days. So I actually bought a one-way plane ticket and flew out. It was right after the New Year, early January. And like you said, I went from Orlando all the way back to Oregon.
Wow. How long did that take you?
Yeah, so you can put in your, Amtrak has an app, and you can put in a start and stop destination, and it'll basically route you. It'll tell you, where your layovers are. It'll tell you how many hours total. And I was just looking at this, kind of prepping for the podcast. It registered as 105 hours and 33 minutes total.
105 hours. 105 hours. You can do a lot of things in 105 hours.
And I think that counts layovers as well. So the route that I took was Orlando to DC, and any train people, they actually name these trains. All of the trains have names, and so that's the Orlando to DC route is the Silver Meteor, and then you have layovers. So I had about a 9-hour layover in DC. So I think that's included in the total trip time.
So in DC, where does it drop you off? And were you able to quickly get onto other transport, go see the sights?
Yeah. So it's funny. The train station in DC is called Union Station, and then the train station in Chicago is also called Union Station.
There's a lot of Union stations.
Yeah, they're both downtown. They're both right in the city, and so in DC you basically get off the train and you're right downtown, and there's actually a metro station or attached to the train station, basically. So you can pretty easily hop on the metro and go anywhere you want to. In my case, my grandfather and grandmother are in Arlington Cemetery. So I took the time. That was kind of my first priority, was to go from the train station straight to Arlington to go visit them.
Tell me about your sleeping arrangements.
Sure. So, yeah, I decided to take the trip traveling in coach, which it's kind of like airplane travel. A coach seat that's what it is. It's just a seat on the train.
But the seats are nicer than an airplane coach seat, right?
Yeah, they are. They're a little bit bigger. They also kind of think about like a lazy boy recliner. The legs kind of come up, so you have somewhere to put your legs if you recline back. So they are a little bit nicer, but they're also similar to an airplane seat in that you can end up with somebody right next to you on the trip, which I think is okay for daytime travel. At night, you're basically sleeping right next to somebody, and unless you're traveling with somebody, it's a stranger. So that was interesting, and I ended up sleeping 4 nights on the train, and the first 2 nights I had somebody right next to me.
And then they snore.
No, so we'll talk about some things that you need to think about bringing if you're thinking about taking this trip. Spoilers: the earplugs they're pretty critical. Just for that, snoring or people behind you kind of talking, train noise, that kind of thing. But yeah, so the next 2 nights on the train, I had the 2 seats to myself. So I feel like that made a pretty big difference in terms of just feeling a little bit more comfortable. You could kind of try some different sleeping positions. But in general, the coach seats aren't very comfortable for sleeping overnight. It's doable, but I experienced pretty broken sleep on the trip.
Well, now did you get to peek into like a sleeper car or see what that might be like, or?
No, I didn't. If you go back that way, they like for you to have tickets. They don't want people just kind of wandering around the train. But it's pretty easy if you want to go to YouTube and just look at, videos of sleeper cars. You could type in Amtrak sleeper car or something like that. There's tons of videos out there. They go into detail.
Of people were taking the train? Did you see different types of people on different legs? Did you see anybody from Florida all the way to Oregon, or share with us a story about some of the people you met?
Sure. I definitely didn't see anybody traveling as far as I was. I didn't have anybody on the whole trip. There were a lot of people from Chicago to going all the way to Portland. So there was, once we got on the train in Chicago, there was a group of people that were all traveling to Oregon. Definitely make friends. I'd say the people on the train, it's a little bit of everybody. There's kind of older retired couples. There's younger people. There's people that are commuting. Especially the train out of DC, leaving DC in the afternoon, there's a lot of commuters. So I think it kind of ran the gamut of different types of people. And I think one of the things that I was taking the trip for was all of that. It was for kind of the human element of being on this trip and just, meeting different people and hearing different stories, hearing everybody's stories and just talking to a lot of people. And for me, that was a big part of the trip, was just kind of the human element of getting to interact with a lot of different kind of random people and hear a lot of stories. Yeah, there were a few things that stuck out. You meet a lot of people in passing. There was one guy in particular, and I should say that I made a video about this whole trip as well. And that was part of my goal, was to document the trip.
And that will be included in the show notes.
Yeah, and it's on YouTube, so you can find it. But I met a guy who was traveling from Chicago to Eugene, Oregon, which is where I went to college. And he brought a ukulele and he brought a guitar, and I asked him to play me a song. I told him I was making a video of the whole trip, and there was a moment where he was playing the guitar for me, and we were just kind of looking out the window and watching the scenery go by, and to me that was kind of I don't know, I remember getting chills as that was happening, because that was just kind of the epitome of the experience for me. That was one that stuck out in my head. There was another group of people who were on the train outside of Washington, D.C., and there was about 7 or 8 people, and we were all in the kind of observation car, which is the big car with all the windows and tables. And all these people knew each other, but they all looked a little bit, they all looked a little bit different. They were different ages and, dressed differently. And I was trying to figure out how they knew each other. I was kind of sat in between them, or I guess in the middle of them. And so it took me a while, but they finally told me. I said, how do you guys all know each other? And they said, oh, we commute on the train every day together. And so we're friends from the train.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so they had this bond that was it. That was their bond was the time, their time spent on the train every day. So I thought that was really interesting, a group of people that just got to know each other from traveling.
It's pretty cool. Any other interesting characters you met on the train?
Well, actually, from that group of people, there was one guy who he kind of looked like he was straight out of Hogwarts. He had a bow tie and a jacket, and I don't know. He was doing like a show and tell with his group of friends, and all of a sudden he pulled out this syringe full of rattlesnake antivenom.
Wait, rattlesnake antivenom?
Yeah. So it was strange, and I think the conversation started because they were talking about how they had found a snake on this train that we were on a week prior.
Snakes on the train, not snakes on a plane. It's snakes on a train.
Yeah. Was
it a rattlesnake on the train?
No, it was an expensive snake. He was a snake. This guy was a snake guy, and he knew. I forget the type of snake it was, but he said it was, it was a high value snake. Like it maybe would cost somebody $500. Anyway.
I guess I never even thought of high value snakes, but I guess they exist.
So it was a pet of somebody's, I think. And so anyway, this guy had snake venom, and so of course I asked him, "What are you doing with it? Why do you have it?" And he apparently used to milk rattlesnakes for their venom.
Now that's a job that I do not want to do in life. Maybe that's an experience you shouldn't have, or maybe you should have. But
yeah. So I don't know if that was his full-time job, but
what do you do for work? I milk snake venom.
That's funny too. I mean, you pass people on the train. He could have said anything, and anyway, I think he did have this snake venom. or anti-venom. I don't think it was good anymore. I think he was keeping it for sentimental purposes. But that was interesting. And just a lot of other different interactions. I sat down with a family of Amish people. Mm-hmm. I actually didn't realize, I wasn't sure they were speaking a different language. I didn't know what they were speaking. And we started talking, and they were Amish, and I just asked them, I said, I've never sat down with an Amish person. I don't know anything about being Amish. And we just talked, and they told me kind of the ins and outs of some of their beliefs and how they live. And it was really interesting. I think one of the things being on the train, I think people open up a little bit more because you're kind of all there together.
Yeah, there's really nowhere to go, and
you got nowhere to go.
Off the train.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that makes people a little bit more open than they might be otherwise in kind of day-to-day life. So I thought that was really interesting. So
what did you learn from the Amish people? Like, did they explain about their culture, or did you learn something new?
Yeah, a little bit. I was asking them, first of all, there was a lot of them. And so I wasn't sure.
Like how many?
I think there was 7 or 8.
Wow.
And so they explained that their family was 10 in total, which is not abnormal. Mm-hmm. They all lived in the same house. They had a goat and a cow. And they explained.
Like to get their own milk and meat and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and they explained
farm to table right there.
Right. They explained kind of the process of being Amish and the education. I was curious about the education part of it. How far do they go with their education? And I think,
And how far do they go?
yeah, I think it stops in the seventh grade.
Or it may have been eighth grade.
Or seventh or eighth grade. And so, they said to me, you're not going to see an Amish doctor or an Amish lawyer. It's more kind of craftsmen and tradespeople and that kind of thing. But they were really nice and really open, and they asked questions to me too. And it was.
What did they ask you?
Oh, I don't remember. I think people are curious where you're going, what you're doing in general, kind of on the train. Where are you headed? What's the purpose of your trip? I think that's kind of the standard question on the train. If you're not good at small talk or having trouble coming up with conversation.
Right. I mean, it makes sense. You're all going somewhere.
Yep.
I guess, what was your favorite part about this whole excursion?
Seeing the countryside was a big one for me. I like the idea of just being able to sit back and relax and watch the countryside pass by. And so that was really, really great. I think one thing to keep in mind if you're thinking about doing this trip, in the summertime, there's going to be more daylight. And I think that's something, I took the trip in early January. It gets dark pretty early. It gets dark at 5:00.
Right.
And so
there's lots of gray cities and cloudy.
Yeah. And so if you're looking to maximize kind of your viewing experience on the train, which for me, that was a big part of it. Summertime would actually be ideal. It might be a little bit more crowded on the train at that time, but best for, I guess, viewing the country.
And I've heard that a lot of people may take the train, like if they're afraid of flying. Did you hear that from people, or just people just likes the train, just like the train in general?
Yeah, that actually, it did come up. It came up quite a bit. People with a fear of flying. I think I might have heard it 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Which I feel like, I don't know, a sample size. That's, I think that is, I don't know. I didn't poll everybody, but I think I definitely heard it in conversation, not just my own conversations, but I overheard people talking about a fear of flying. So
the different cars that you had access to, you had your car where you had like your coach seats, and there's also a dining car and an observation car. Were people using the observation car? Was it busy? What was the food like?
Yeah, so there's kind of the coach area where your seat is, and the observation car, which it's got windows like the rest of the train, but there's also windows above you. So it's trying to create this ultimate viewing experience, I guess, for the trip. And there's tables, and basically like picture like a diner table. There's a bunch of those. And so that, for me, that was the area where I probably spent most of the time, because I was going to sleep in my seat, in my coach seat. So I didn't want to be there all day and sleep there at night.
Right.
So for me, I was in the observation car most of the time. And there's also, like you mentioned, there's a dining car as well. So that was actually a really fun part of the experience as well, was being in the dining car, because basically the way that they do it is you make a reservation for the dining car if you want to have dinner there.
Right.
Only for dinner, actually. Breakfast and lunch, you can just kind of walk in.
Can you make reservations same day, or how far in advance do you need to make this reservation?
Yeah, they'll do it same day. And even if you walk in at 7 p.m., they'll still, or, early, like 5 p.m., they'll still fit you in.
Yeah.
But what they try and do is fill those seats. And so I was traveling by myself, and so I would walk in the dining car, and they would, they come and greet you, and they say, hey, have a seat over here. And all of a sudden you're seated next to 2 or 3 random strangers for dinner, which I thought was fun. It kind of gets back to, getting to hear, I guess, stories, people stories, kind of where they're going, and I don't know, even if for me that was really neat, was being able to dine with these people that I didn't know and just hear their stories and where they were going and what they were up to. I thought that was really cool.
It's pretty cool. I like sitting with strangers for dinner.
I know you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're really introverted, I don't know. Maybe that wouldn't be your thing. There was a woman who was on the train and she ordered a food and she said, "I'm going to go take this back to my car because, I'm not very social." And I think that was out of the ordinary. I think most people are in it, to hear some of those stories and get that experience. But yeah.
Cool. Now let's talk about cost. So the cost of you traveling from Orlando, Florida, all the way down to Chemult, Oregon, which is the closest station to Bend, Oregon. What was that cost? And actually, that included a bus route too from Chemult to Bend.
Yeah. So the total cost from Orlando to Chemult was $369 for the ticket, and that didn't include the bus. I think the bus was another $25.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a train station in your city, Amtrak may have a bus that will meet you at the train station and then take you to your city. I think that's how it works for like San Francisco too.
Yeah, and the other thing, if you're thinking about taking a train trip, there is an option there's a few rail passes that Amtrak offers.
So what's a rail pass?
Right. So, and what the other thing I did is in the video that I made, I linked to a lot of, or I guess I wrote a lot of kind of answers to questions and linked to some content out there.
Yeah, and we'll include those in the show notes too.
But a rail pass is, think about it, if you're looking to take a trip like I did, but not do it in 5 days, but basically spread it out over 15 or 30 or 45 days, it basically allows you to have different legs in your journey and get off the train and get back on the train and get off the train. So the way that they do it is you can get a rail pass that's either 15 days, 30 days, or 45 days, and that gets you 8, 12, or 18 different segments of travel. So if you were looking to explore the country and use the train as your transportation source, that could be a decent option.
Now, a question about that. I mean, I have seen some train stations in the middle of nowhere. Do you just get off the train in those places and walk around and try to find a taxi or a rental car?
Yeah.
How do you do it?
I guess, if you're traveling the country, if you're looking to see the U.S., you might be stopping at bigger cities.
Right.
If you wanted to get off in Minot, North Dakota, a smaller town, you'd probably hop off the train, and then they probably have taxis that you could grab. So I guess it just depends. I think it seems like the kind of thing that you would want to plan out a little bit. I mean, you could wing it also, but it would be good to spend some time thinking about where you wanted to go and kind of plan out your route.
So how much do these rail passes cost?
Yeah, so I looked this up, just kind of prepping, and the 15-day pass, and these are just current prices, but it was $459, and then the 30-day pass was $689, and the 45-day pass was $899. So
that's not bad if you want to go and see a lot of places and meet new people.
Yeah,
that's going to be an adventure of a lifetime. Spend a summer on a train.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun. You just figure out your transportation once you're off the train. But with Uber and taxis and Uber and Lyft, shared cars, that kind of thing, and it's made it more feasible, I feel like, to make that happen.
So let's talk about cost of the food on the train. Now, how much was an average breakfast, lunch, dinner? I know some of the sleeper cars may include food, but if you are going in coach, what is your food cost?
Yeah, so there is the range. The range for breakfast in terms of price was $8 to $14.
Okay.
For breakfast, lunch was more in the 12 to 15 range, and dinner was 16 to 25.
It's not terrible.
So those are kind of your ranges. And then the other option is you have access to some food. So there's like a snack car as well. And it's not the diner car. It's kind of just part of, I think it's part of the observation car in most of the trains. And basically you can walk up there and you can get candy, you can get beer. I think they had wine. And you can get some food as well. So they'll have some kind of like prepared sandwiches and some other options for eating as well.
How did the food taste in the dining car?
I'd say it was okay. I think it was probably on par with airplane food.
Okay, all right.
It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. But the one thing I would say is the service in the dining car was great. Everybody was super friendly. Mm-hmm. All of the people that were there working were great and really friendly.
Cool. And you are stopping off at different cities. You had layovers in DC and Chicago. So you're able to go get some food there too? Yeah. So at least for my route, the layover in DC was from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. So that gives you most of the day in DC. And so I was able to get lunch and get back on the train. Our train was actually a little bit delayed out of Orlando by about 3 hours. Yeah.
So it cut that DC layover a little bit. But then in Chicago, it's a little bit of the same. It was 8:45 in the morning to about 2:15 in the afternoon was the layover. So again, kind of at the train station in Chicago is right downtown. You can quickly get to the Willis Tower, get anywhere you want to,
and find some deep dish
in the city. Get some pizza, yeah. So you are able to get some food off the train. But I would say if you're looking to take a really a long trip, to bring some snacks. In my case, I traveled with just like an airplane carry-on suitcase. Mm-hmm. with clothes and everything from my Florida kind of trip. I had clothes, but I also brought a bunch of snacks too.
Now, did they charge you to check your bag, or where did you put your bags when you got off at your different stops? How did that work out?
So the bigger train stations will have baggage areas basically, and you can walk up to these things and basically just check your luggage. So they charge you, I think it was $10 at each station, but for $10, you can drop off your luggage so that if you're looking to go explore the city, you're not followed around by a carry-on suitcase.
So you don't want to leave your bags on the train while you go explore the city.
No, I mean, so you're switching trains too. So
Got it.
The Orlando to DC was the Silver Meteor, the DC to Chicago was the Capital Limited, the Chicago to Portland was the Empire Builder, and then the Portland to Chemolt, Oregon is the coastal train that actually goes all the way from Seattle to beyond LA even.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I just figured it stopped in LA. Huh.
I think it goes down to San Diego. Yeah. Yep.
That's pretty cool.
Which would be a fun one. I think going down the California coast would be really great.
Well, we might be doing that this summer. We might take a train from Chemolt down to San Luis Obispo. So we'll have to update this train episode with a family edition. We'll have a 3-year-old in tow.
Yeah, and I did see kids on the train, little kids, and I think at least
were they crying? How they do?
No, they were great. The ones that I saw, and I guess that's the other part is with the train, you never know kind of what your experience is going to be and who's going to be seated behind you, and if kind of like an airplane, is there going to be a baby right in front of you?
Right.
I didn't have any bad, any rough experiences like that. I always feel bad for parents if their kids are crying on airplanes. Trains, the same thing. But I would say definitely travel with earplugs. for babies or just train noise or
Right.
conversation in the train, anything you want to drown out. And then an eye mask was another big one, because even at night, there's still quite a bit of light in the train. They don't dim all of the lights, so it's not pitch black dark at night if you're trying to sleep. So an eye mask is another, I'd say, must have.
Yeah, great. Those are great tips.
Yeah.
And I think we've covered all of our top tips and cost. And I know your cost of the trip was around $367, and at the time you were going was right after the New Year, so prices were high for sleeper cars. I remember even seeing some of the sleeper car prices even around like $900 from like Chicago to Portland or something, but that's not the average price for a sleeper car, right?
No, I don't think so. I was trying to get an idea again, and it looks like you can get one of the kind of rooms, which would be good for two people typically. And I looked at this just trying to book another trip a couple months out just to see what it looked like. And it looked like it was between $200 and $400, but it's still per leg.
Per leg. So you still
leg.
might be adding $1,000 to the trip,
Yeah.
depending how far you're going.
Yeah.
But
it would be very comfortable. And I think that was
you might sleep better.
Yeah, that was the biggest challenge, was just getting good sleep on the train. I think it was just broken every night, and it was by the fourth night it definitely caught up with me.
Would you do it again?
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe you'll get a sleeper car next time.
Yeah. I think one of the other really cool parts of the trip you were asking about, what things that stuck out.
Yeah.
Was it was on that fifth, I guess, day 5 of the trip, and I just finished my 4th night of sleeping on the train. And if you're
going a little delirious there.
If you're taking that trip from, well, if you're basically coming into Portland, you wake up along the Columbia River, which is really beautiful, and the sun, you wake up, at least I woke up, and when I looked out, the sun was coming up, and so I got to see the sunrise on the Columbia, and then a little ways farther down there was a rainbow, and
that sounds magical.
It was great, and that it made me kind of forget about the lack of sleep, and it was a long trip. By the end of it, I was wore out. I was tired, but it was something I wanted to do. It wasn't. It was great.
Cool. Well, thank you for telling us about your experience, and we'll have lots of links and information in the show notes. And if you are listening to this episode, please leave a review on iTunes and wherever you listen. Please review us. And we also have a Facebook group, Experiences You Should Have Podcast. So thank you, Luke, and definitely check out the show notes for the amazing video that Luke made. He's quite the videographer and editor, so definitely just have a cup of coffee and give his train trip a watch.
Thanks, and thanks for having me. It was fun talking about it.
Of course. I'll talk to you any day. All right, thanks.